Hey, this is Miss Warren. This is April 12th, 2018. You're probably watching this video because you missed class today. Alright, just to let you know, Civil War maps are due on April 13th. We've had those for a couple weeks now, and Ed Puzzles on Battle of Antietam and the Emancipation Proclamation is also due. Now, this lesson today, you're probably going to see some information down here about Pear Deck. We did use Pear Deck in class today, but just follow directions on the video here and you'll catch up just fine. Alright, find where you've last left off in your notes. Should be around page 75. The last thing we talked about was the Gettysburg Address. Please skip a line and write "Meanwhile in the South." This is just a transition phrase. Last Thursday and Friday, we learned about the Battle of Gettysburg being a turning point in the war because Lee is severely weakened by such heavy losses in his army. And we also spoke about the famous speech, the Gettysburg Address, which turned the goal of the war into saving democracy. Funny that it happens, the Battle of Gettysburg ends on July 3rd, 1863, and the Battle of Vicksburg, which is our topic today, also ends but January 4th, 1863. So they're happening at the same time, but we're going to move to the South. Now here's the Mississippi River, and if you recall, we had a plan called the Anaconda Plan of the Union to take Richmond, blockade all the ports, as well as taking control, of the Mississippi River. So if you kind of put your hand right along this area, you can see how it's going to separate Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana from the east side of the United States. And what this does, it creates a disconnect, it divides them, and they can't help each other afterwards. Now, Ulysses S. Grant had been working on this for a couple years now, from 1862, coming slowly down the Mississippi. We have New Orleans is under Union control now, and they're coming up. But there was a small spot in between Vicksburg. And beef from Texas, and sugar cane and molasses and salt from Louisiana, and iron ore from this area of the Ozark Mountains are having a very difficult time getting supplies through if they have cut off the Mississippi. So we want to make sure that we cut this off. The South is very determined to keep Vicksburg afloat. Now, Vicksburg was a really hard city to attack. First, it had high ground. It was on a hill. So defending a city like Vicksburg was easy if you have high ground, but very difficult to attack. The Mississippi was on one side, and then they had a marshy lowland area on the other side. So it took quite a while for Grant to really get a good hold on Vicksburg. Now, as you can see, Vicksburg is right up on the Mississippi River, so it was very difficult for us to get ships through. Now, Grant did get a few ironclad riverboats through, but he had to take his men around the outside. He decided that the weakest spot of Vicksburg was on its land side, so he went to Jackson. This is where a railroad hub was. If you can see the railroads coming in all four ends. We took over Jackson, which is now the capital today, and then came through the back and weakened that area because that's where he might get supplies if things are available. There's a video down here. It gives a short description of it, of the battle, and you can go ahead and type that in and pause the video. So what Grant did is he ended up what's called laying siege, and it's surrounding an area and bombing them and cutting them off of all resources and supplies until they finally just starve or give up. You know, they just don't have any more. And so they would bomb for like 47 days straight. They bombed Vicksburg from the outside with cannons and all kinds of stuff. And citizens had to dig caves into the side of the hill to protect themselves from all the bombings. And it was constant. It was all day and all night. This is an animated map video. It's a little bit longer. You can skip through different parts of it, but it really does give good details about what happened at the Battle of Gettysburg. So the Battle of Gettysburg was considered another turning point because we did win. We did shut down the Mississippi, and so the western part of the Confederacy was cut off from the eastern part. It happened on the 4th of July in 1863. Now, after that, Ulysses S. Grant is given the control of the entire Union Army of the United States. Lincoln liked what he saw, and he decides to declare something called total war, which will be in tomorrow's lesson. You can pause the video to write down the notes. Now, it's 1864, and regardless if there's a war going on, there is a presidential election. And Lincoln, as shown here, is giving his second inaugural address. And once more, he gets the opportunity on a grand stage to talk to the United States and the Union and the Confederacy. Here is just a small clip from the movie Lincoln, and it just shows a little bit of what it would have looked like if he gave his second inaugural address. Skip, 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 skip. All right. This is just a short video about Lincoln himself as a man and what a great president he was. You can find that on YouTube. And skip a line, and we talked about his second inaugural address. He believed that, he said in the speech that America was being punished by God, because of the 250 years of servitude and slavery and bondsmen and money and sweat and blood that came from slaves, that now we are repaying that in soldiers' deaths. We are now repaying that with the sword. And it's time to reconcile. He called for a peaceful truth. And he had a plan. And I know I don't have anything here on government, just go with it. He said we must bind up the wounds of the nation with malice towards none and charity for all. He says we need to take care of the soldier who was born into battle. We must take care of the widow, the orphan, and on all sides who have been damaged by this war. So malice means hatred, evilness, and he wanted the South to know that he was going to bring them back in as peacefully as possible and not punish them. Because if we did that, we bring them in being punished and they would not want to stay. And of course, then we'd have more of a situation on our hands. So it was a very delicate situation. One of his most famous speeches. Okay, that's all we have for now. We're going to finish the war tomorrow, and if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll talk to you soon.